You what?
I'm going to wear these, otherwise I'll get hay fever. It's all gone yellow!
Dear dog.
She wants to go on the tractor. Can she come with you?
Oh, the little red tractor's out.
Jeremy Clarkson lives in the Cotswolds with his wife, Francie, and their 3 children. But Jeremy is not a native of southern England. For generations, his family came from Yorkshire, a hidden history that he knows little about. Behind these faded snapshots lies a remarkable story. To discover it, Jeremy will have to go on a journey into his own past.
Right, move these garage flowers.
And to get there, he'll need a map.
This is it. This is where I came from.
The family history expert has researched and drawn up Jeremy's family tree.
I think a lot of people think when they look into their family trees that it's going to be William the Conqueror, Warwick the Kingmaker, John of Gaunt, and then, oh look, it's me, so look how I'm descended from royalty. Whereas this, I think, is more the reality of it. I mean, on my dad's side, there's absolutely nothing. Thomas Clarkson, William Clarkson, a labourer. If you take the Clarkson name back, labourer, master tailor, ooh. They're all from within a few miles of one another, this lot. You see, he married a girl from Tickhill, who then produced a load of children who lived in Tickhill. He produced my grandfather, who lived in Tickhill, who produced my dad, who lived in Tickhill. There's one of them here, went to Castleford. That must be 15 miles away. Not exactly Scott of the Antarctic, but it was a start. 200 years of interbreeding. I'm surprised I haven't got one eye.
The family tree shows how Jeremy's ancestors' lives changed as Britain moved into the period that most fascinates him, the Industrial Revolution.
Agricultural labourer, farmer. And then look, colliery carpenters, the mines were coming on stream. They weren't even clever enough to actually go down the pit. Now, my mum's side, that's kind of more interesting. Yep. John Kilner, the glass bottle manufacturer. I think they did the Kilner Jar, you know, Nigella Lawson's always prattling on about them. This is the proper one, I don't think, because they're glass, but they've got sort of a seal on them, and then you clamp them down. And they're called Kilner Jars. And I think he was the Kilner who did those. I tell you what, where the story is good is A, look at the amount of people who were in it. B, it's a name that has survived. I mean, it's survived more than 150 years, and people still refer to it as Kilner Jars. But also, what happened to it? Because it stopped with my great-grandmother. You see, in this generation, there are no glass bottle manufacturers, and all those lot, just about all of them, made glass bottles. I would head straight for this guy, Kilner, because he, at least, it seems, did something other than harvest barley.
To find out more about the Kilners, Jeremy drives north to Nottinghamshire, where his mother Shirley has lived since his father died 10 years ago.
As a family, we never really talked about ancestors, as it were. I mean, I do know that one of the Kilners had a car very soon after the car was invented, which is the equivalent of having a private jet today. You know, if it was 1901 or something like that, that would be like, so you think, well, God, you know, they must have been very successful.
Morning!
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Nice to see you. Very well, very
Oh,
well.
God,
Isn't it?
thank you,
Good
Mum.
time. Oh, yes, cup of coffee.
I've come to pick your brains before senility takes you in the night.
It's got me. It's too late. No, look.
Well, you can still do a crossword.
Look. Whilst waiting for you, look.
And the football.
Nearly finished. Oh, did you see it?
I did.
Oh.
I didn't see the end. I listened on the radio.
It's funny, you know, when you're young, like you, you're not the least bit interested in family history, and then the older you get, you begin to sort of take an interest in your roots, and...
So you are quite interested?
I am now.
Why?
No, you see, I never saw my grandmother, and she lived 4 miles away.
Your mother was cut off.
My mother quarrelled with her. She was a right old cub. Apparently. And
She was a Kilner.
she was a Kilner, yes. And she was my mother's mother.
The grandmother Shirley never saw was Annie Kilner, Jeremy's connection to the famous Kilner Jar.
Do you know anything about Kilner Glass?
Well, my mother used to bottle fruit, like you did in the war. You put fruit in these bottles, these jars, and then you boiled it, and everything expanded. You screwed the lid on tight with a rubber seal.
I thought Kilner jars were a lever arrangement.
No, I've got some of those. They're not Kilner ones. These are screw top with a rubber seal, and you screwed the top on, and then as the fruit or the heat contracted inside, it formed a vacuum. And the factory was in Conisbrough, where Conisbrough Castle is.
What I'm interested in is the notion that you've got this, if it became a household name, and globally too, because they know
Yes.
about Kilner jars in America, I'm presuming it must have been colossal.
Oh, it was. Enormous. He was a millionaire in his day, I should think.
Was he?
Well, he must have been. If he'd any business acumen at all, he must have been. But where did it go? I don't know. Oh,
You
it's
didn't
Very interesting.
suddenly become interested. No, where did it go?
No idea.
Any answers? So more questions than answers.
Well, yeah, it is. There are more. A lot. I mean, what's happened there is I've found out that my mother, as I've always suspected, knows very little about the history of the family. Which does mean I'm left thinking, well, when did Kilner start? When did he finish? What caused him to finish? What happened to the money? A lot of questions. I suspect it's time to get on the road and go and find out, but I actually, at this point, can't think where to go. Conisbrough is obvious, Dennerby, find out if anybody there knows what happens to the factory.
An entry in the 1841 census shows that John Kilner lived in a place called Whitwood, near Castleford in West Yorkshire.
Profession, trade, employment, or independent means it says giraffe. Glass. Glass M. I suppose that could be glass manufacturer. Hang on a minute.
Now at least Jeremy has a place to go. Somewhere he knows that Kilners once were. Whitwood.
Whitwood. There it is, look. Through Retford and out of Nottinghamshire. Hey, back into Yorkshire. Very nice. Bye. No sign of incontinence yet from the old dear. That's always been the threat. The first sign of a wet cushion in her house, and we'd push her off Beachy Head. Do you know, I never did fully understand why she left Yorkshire and moved, well, only just into Nottinghamshire. I've no idea, because all her friends are in Yorkshire, so I've no clue why she did that. And Nottinghamshire seems such a non-county apart from anything else. It's like Staffordshire, it's one of those counties that's there just to fill in gaps between the important ones, I think. We know from the piece of paper you just shown me that John Kilner lived near Castleford and that there was a glassworks just up the road. So obviously we must go there and see what still remains and if anybody knows anything.
Jeremy is driving north into what was once the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. The first half of the 19th century was a time of great change for Britain. In just 50 years, the population had doubled to 21 million. More than half these people now lived in towns and cities, lured from the fields by the new factories. Nowhere were these changes more profound than the north of England. Jeremy's great-great-great-great-grandfather, John Kilner, was in the right place at the right time.
Next roundabout, take the second exit.
Right, we're homing in on where it said on that map the glassworks were. Pottery Street.
Roundabout, take the second exit.
Is that it? Damn.
Turn right.
No,
Then
Pottery
you have
Street.
arrived.
Wow, I wonder if this is it.
Man in bow tie with briefcase. The cavalry. Help is at hand.
Local historian John Goodchild has been looking into the early history of the Kilners.
It can't be a coincidence that you're knocking around here with a pipe and a bow tie.
Why is that?
Clarkson.
Sorry?
Why is that?
But you just don't look like you fit, really, in
Oh,
here. Rather conveniently, it's got like a sort of...
oh, that's splendid.
Are you able to help me with this quest that I have?
Indeed.
Wakefield, is it going to be on this?
Amongst the documents that John has found is one that, for the first time, put some faces to the Kilner story. For Jeremy, it's an opportunity to look his ancestors in the eye.
Whoa! Here they all are, look. John, this is John Kilner. He appears to be smartly dressed.
This is the man who started what would become Kilner Glass. But when he first arrived here at Whitwood, he had something else in mind.
There were 5 working glass bottle makers who came, 'tis said, but there's no evidence, but they claimed, on a fishing trip to Castleford. And when they were here, they saw an old kiln which had been used for metal processing. And they thought that this would be very suitable for conversion into a glassworks. They had a joint capital of £70 and decided that they would set up in business on their own.
At the age of 37, John Kilner and his 4 friends set up the Black Flag Glassworks in this Yorkshire field.
So the Black Flag Works was somewhere at the back of these cottages.
Somewhere just here.
Yes.
Seems strange, it's all just...
Weeds now.
Well, so much of industrial history is.
Just weeds.
That's a funny thing to be standing, you know, your great-great-great-grand. I think, well, he did come fishing here, that's a known fact, and he did see a metalworks there. He was just a simple employee working, you know, as a glass blower. Hey, I could go on my own here.
"15 years later, with the Industrial Revolution gathering momentum, John Kilner left the Black Flag Partnership to set up his own glass factory 14 miles away at Thornhill Lees.
Is that it? No. Brightside Industries Limited. The Yorkshire Electrical Transformers Club. Now, why aren't I a member of that? Probably the same reason I'm not a member of the Grout Show. It'll just be full of media types.
In the 1840s, Thornhill Lees was an expanding industrial town. Now, it's a very different sight.
Providence Glassworks, here. It's where those trees are right now. What is this, a community centre? I mean, I don't know what this is, but it sure as hell isn't a glassworks. It's the surgery, doctor's surgery. That's 110 years ago. That is a whopping factory. I mean, really massive.
And it's just sports pitches now.
The booklet Jeremy was given in Whitwood turns out to contain more than just faces. Published by the Kilners in 1894 to celebrate their first 50 years in business, it tells the story of an industrial powerhouse.
1844, they did £250,000 worth of bottles out of here. 1893, estimated value of £305,000. They were exported to Australia, South Africa, West Indies, Bengal, Burma, Queensland, that is Australia, New Zealand, Victoria, which is Australia, America, Ceylon, Madras. They went absolutely everywhere. Jesus wept.
In 15 years, John Kilner had turned his original stake of a few pounds into a thriving international business. But amongst the impressive statistics, Jeremy can find no mention of the Kilner Jar. According to the brochure, the Kilner's army of glassblowers were just producing ordinary bottles. But this was more than enough. Sales were so good that in 1864 John Kilner built a second factory at Conisbrough and opened 3 warehouses in London.
Really, there are 2 questions. How big did it become if that wasn't big enough? And what the hell happened to it? I mean, it's gone. There's no evidence it ever existed apart from a few old ladies going, oh yeah, Kilner Jars, I remember them.
With nothing left in Thornhill Lees, the next stop is the Kilners Warehouses on the Thames.
I must go to London. I've got to go and see if there's any part of these warehouses still left. And the pubs are open. Well, they seem to have opened a warehouse here and then opened another one, and then eventually opened another one, getting bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. Conveniently, the address doesn't exist anymore on the A to Z of the first one, but it's off Upper Thames Street in Brook Wharf, which, well, Upper Thames Street's up there, but between us and St Paul's Cathedral. Oh, hold on, a map. Millennium Bridge inclinator. What is an inclinator? The Americans have been, haven't they, and invented a word. So, Millennium Bridge. Brook's Wharf. I think it is that big Victorian. Well, it is that big Victorian one. Follow me. The Kilners, we know, had a fleet of ships, loaded them up in Thornhill Lees, sailed them down the east coast, up the Thames, and to their warehouses here.
By the 1890s, the Kilner's Thameside warehouse was busier than ever. Demand for all kinds of alcoholic drinks was increasing, despite the efforts of teetotal reformers. And brand names were proliferating, each needing a new design of bottle. By 1894, the Kilners were making over 3,000 different varieties of glass bottles and jars. All of them were stored in their London warehouse.
Now this is Brook's Wharf. There's a description in the booklet about just how many thousands and thousands and thousands of bottles were on display there for customers to say, yeah, from the smallest vial to the largest show bottle, they call them. I don't know what those are. Presumably the things that we put coins in now to save lifeboats in pubs. But nevertheless, I mean, just every conceivable type of bottle was in there. Customers came down and said, oh, I'll have 1,000 of those, 100,000 of those, 20,000 of those. Onto more ships, which were presumably anchored here in these pilings, and then off to everywhere.
Kilner Glass was a classic Victorian family firm. With no death duties, 19th century businesses like the Kilners could be passed down through the generations. After John Kilner died, aged 65, his 4 sons took over Kilner Glass, each running a different department. Third son, George, was Jeremy's great-great-great-grandfather. But it was one of the next generation that would bring the Kilner empire to its peak, George's son, Caleb. It was during Caleb's time that demand for consumer goods and packaging really took off. And it wasn't just alcohol. From medicines to food to chemicals, glass containers were in huge demand. The Kilners were in the right business.
Hi, Philip. Yeah, it's Jeremy Clarkson. Listen, I'm sorry to disturb you. I was just wondering, how many people on the Sunday Times Rich list are involved in packaging? Have you got that on a computer database that you just look up? They've got how much? 4.95 billion. Smurfit, 262. Instant, 60. That's all I want, yeah. Okay, take care, bye. Packaging still is the business to be in. I mean, it was back then, obviously, and it is now. The Rousings, the people who do Tetra Pak, you know, the milk cartons that spray milk everywhere when you open them, 4.95 billion, they're the third richest people in Britain. Cornish, 700 million, the Smurfit's 262 million, and so it goes on. I mean, packaging, I suppose it's because you have it, you throw it away. You always have new bits of packaging. And it was then, I mean, that's what the Kilners were doing. They were in packaging. It was disposable. Well, I want to know if you can still buy Kilner jars. Hi there. Do you mind if this lot come in? Do you have any Kilner jars?
No, you can't get Kilner jars anymore.
You can't? Do you think it's hinged or screw top?
Screw top.
It's easy, see. I thought it was a hinged thing.
No, they're the Le Parfait jars, the French ones.
The French ones. So it's all gone. What a baffling thing. I mean, how can a company that size have disappeared? I've spotted an opening in the market. I'm going to start like a glass works with like a rubber seal and a screw top. Call it something like the Kilner Jar. So far, I've got the sense of scale of Kilner's, how big it was, but uncovered none of that Victorian ingenuity, which must have existed, otherwise we still wouldn't refer to the Kilner Jar.
The brochure boasts that the Kilners won an award, but it doesn't say what for. So Jeremy heads to South Kensington, the site of one of the great Victorian exhibitions.
Because they won prizes at the Great Exhibition in 1862, and I want to see what they won them for. Was it just quality, or was it something to do with this elusive Kilner jar?
The Great Exhibitions embodied the spirit of the Victorian age. A remarkable 1/4 of the British population visited the 1862 exhibition to marvel at the best the industrial might of Britain had to offer. Not to be left out, Kilner Glass secured a stand to show off their wares to an eager world.
Andy.
Andy McConnell is an expert on the history of glass.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks very much.
Good.
Indeed. Yeah.
You found a little spot out the heat.
Yeah,
The reason I've come down here to this part of the neck of the woods, 1862, wasn't it? Was or 62, the big exhibition.
Yes, the London International.
The exhibition. Now, it says in the Kilner brochure that they won some prizes here and some medals.
Well, this is what they won it for.
Ah, fine, good. We're there.
There we are. You're not going to call this a Kilner jar?
No, that's nothing like a Kilner jar.
It's for wine merchants. It re-emphasises, whilst the Kilner jar, the name is held in this particular vessel, but in fact, what you're talking about is one of 3,000 objects that were being produced by 1,500 people on 2 sites that covered 17 acres. I mean, with its own railway sidings. The 2 factories were talking to each other by telephone. I mean, they were
the 2 Kilner factories.
The 2 Kilner factories in 1870s. They had telephones. I mean, extraordinary. They were absolutely on the button. You know, they're building their own railway carriages. They've got depots in London where you can actually bring the train into the depot to unload. I mean, we're talking about stupendous operation here. I mean, these guys were big. The bottle kings. You know, they were the bottle kings.
It seems like Kilner were making 3,000 different products.
They were.
And yet, only one of them has become known as a Kilner jar, and nobody seems to know what it is.
One person who understands the Victorian ingenuity that created the Kilner Jar is Susan Mossman, glass curator at the Science Museum. According to Susan, it was during the 1890s that Caleb finally hit upon the idea that would immortalise the name Kilner.
Yeah, there you are, the family name.
That's a Kilner jar.
That's the Kilner Jar.
Which has a screw top.
Exactly.
Not a hinged top.
Not a hinge top, no.
So it's a screw top.
Screw top.
Followed by a... Right, with a rubber seal.
With a rubber seal, and that's probably that's the airtight seal.
And is this was that the clever bit?
That probably is the clever bit, combined with these screw tops, which were invented in the middle of the 19th century.
It might look like just another jar to us, but in the days before refrigeration, a new way of preserving food was big news.
Because you can put a very hot preserve in it, cool it down in the bottle, and it's airtight and it's bacteria-free.
But did they take out a patent on it?
There's 1999, which you can be it's very, very sort of worn, actually. You can hardly see it.
Where is it? Can I
I think it's just there.
The number on the bottom of the jar could be a patent number.
Thirsty work, sleuthing. But worthwhile. Sounds awful because we've now reached the point where we've established what Kilner was. Dynamic, go-ahead, large, huge. And then it went. And I'm sure there's a very important, noble social reason why that happened. General strike, depression, foreign competition, could be anything. But selfishly, I'm quite keen to find out what happened to the money. So there was plainly a lot of it. So first port of call in the morning, Patents Office. 1999 written on that bottle. Is there somewhere a dusty piece of paper that says Jeremy Clarkson is owed £42 billion?
Next morning, Jeremy arrives at the British Library where copies of all patents are kept.
Have you remembered your number that you spotted on?
Oh, yeah, 1999. How could I forget that? So it says, oh, I was going to make a £4 billion, but then, I forgot the number. So now I've remembered the number. Morning.
Morning.
Jeremy Clarkson. I have an appointment to see... You've already done it. This is what went wrong with Britain. Okay, we've got the British Library, so people get their passes there, and then they walk all the way around. Yeah, that works. That works well. And should we make the building really beautiful? Yeah, let's. Look at it. There are crematoriums in Midlands towns that are more beautiful than that. Stephen. Jeremy Clarkson. Sorry to drag you out of bed so early, but I'm quite keen. Now, have you got these patents here?
"10 minutes and half a mile later, Jeremy finds himself back in familiar territory.
We're now back to where we started from.
Yep.
Right, back to where we started. If I keep going for long enough, will I end up back in my bedroom? This is the Kilner Jar.
This is the Kilner Jar, registered by them. Perhaps there was a possibility of litigation. They wanted to warn someone off. We don't know.
It turns out that 1999 is a red herring. The Kilners trademarked the name Kilner Jar, but they didn't patent the design. This meant other companies could manufacture and sell identical jars, but they had to call them something else. Over the years, the Kilners did apply for 18 patents, but these were for glass-making techniques, not new ideas for bottles. Perhaps surprisingly, they didn't even complete half the applications.
Void by reason of the patentee having neglected to file a specification in pursuance of the conditions of the letters patent. In other words, they never sent in
The complete document, exactly.
They sent this
neglected,
through
neglected. I mean, to me, that speaks volumes.
But they were successful in registering the name the Kilner Jar.
Yeah.
Which leads me on to an important question. Who's got it now?
put in Kilner Jar in
Yeah.
to see if we can find that as a registration.
Yeah.
Kilner. I'm just waiting for it to come up so I can see what this is for. And it says it is indeed for glass fruit preserving jars, and Mr. Anthony Enfield of Cheshire, who possibly is trying to muscle in and take advantage of the name.
Well, who the hell is this man?
There he is.
Flat 6? That just has Chancer written all over it, doesn't it?
And any answers?
Well, on a personal note, I've got to ring this chap in Cheshire and find out if he's got any of my billions of pounds. You know, hello, do you have any of my billions? As far as the story's concerned, the what happened to the Kilners, I still don't know why they went belly up.
Before Jeremy goes in search of his personal fortune, he needs to know if there is one left to find. That means working out when and how the Kilners went under. It's a long shot, but one possible explanation is a court case hinted at in the Kilner brochure.
Well, it seems that I've got to go to some kind of records place in Huddersfield to find out what this court case is all about. Because there is still this question of how this enormous company came to flounder. And maybe we'll get to the end of the trail and someone will have put a little note saying treasure marked with an X. They buried all the money in a garden, so I don't know.
Records still exist for most 19th century court cases. Victorian legal documents may be complicated and wordy, but they can also be full of surprises.
That was a fascinating 2 hours. It was amazing because the court case, it was environmental, which was unheard of, I would imagine, back then. What happened was all that countryside around the plant, around the factory at Thornhill Lees, belonged to the estate of the Earl of Scarborough. And they argued that their trees were dying and their crops were being killed by the smoke. The photograph you showed me, this one, by the smoke coming out of the chimneys. And this was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because Kilners couldn't turn the furnaces off. And so it went to court. And the judge made a decision, which we ought to check his lines, actually, and see if he's produced Jonathan Porritt, because the judge said, yeah, it's a nuisance, and I made a note of his line, no man has the right to interfere with the supply of pure air. I mean, this is the dawn of Greenpeace, if you like. 3/4 of the population of Thornhill Lees worked at Kilners, 3/4. So they all wrote saying, we will all lose our jobs, and they were told to bugger off, basically. I mean, this is there's always the problem with environmentalism. However it's wrapped up, it's not based with in any sense of reality. No, throw 400 people away, not interested in them, and hand over the world's glassmaking to the French and the Americans. But look at this beech tree. See how healthy it is. The upshot was they were given 3 months to buy at a cost of £1,500 each 6 gas furnaces. £1,500 in 1871. I've had a thought. This trip to Huddersfield is where I get my, excuse me, deep-seated loathing for environmentalists from. I mean, look at this square, look around, okay? The hotel, the municipal buildings, look at that for a railway station, look at that. And all of it was paid for by factories that make smoke. Huddersfield's front room, paid for by smoke. He'd understand. Harold, he knew.
The Kilners had survived their court case, but the next challenge they faced was mechanization. In the early 20th century, a new machine from America called the Owens began to replace traditional glass blowing. The Kilners had been forced to buy gas furnaces, but would they choose to invest in expensive new machinery? Glass manufacturer Alistair Rattray has found something in the company archives.
Whilst we've been on our little tour, we've been able to look this out, which, interestingly enough, does mention the Kilners people and
the Owens bottle making machine.
That is the Owens bottle machine.
But this is the American one we were talking about.
This is the one that came in about 1907 or so, and it was the first really big, high productivity machine. This is when we moved to 40 bottles a minute, which in those days, that was supersonic.
Well, if you look here, by 1907, the first impact of a truly automatic machine was felt throughout the industry. In that year, Kilners at Thornhill Lees introduced the Owen. So they were quite fast off the mark in getting one of these machines.
Still unclear about the fate of the glassworks, Jeremy heads for the one important place left on the Kilner map, Conisbrough. But en route, he decides to take a quick detour.
This is Tickhill. This is where everyone on my dad's side, all of them, were born and brought up, right back to the 18th century, and half the people on my mum's side. We were told, were we not, before we set off on this epic voyage, not to film in any graveyards, no mournful shots of people wistfully looking at graves and cue adagios for strings and walk off. But we're not doing that. I just wanted to say that is Clarkson genetic landfill. You can time me, how long it takes me to find a Clarkson gravestone.
On your marks, get set, go.
Vors, Potton, Clarkson.
10 seconds.
2 Clarksons. There's 4 on this one. Maria, Edward, Charles and Sarah. Another one here. There's somebody here called Saxton. He must have changed his name at some point from Clarkson. You just got to swivel the camera around, you find all the living ones. It's a sort of migration, really. All my aunts and uncles are moving this way until they end up in there. Yeah, that'll be an aunt. Here comes another one along now with that bag. A couple of nephews there. Another cousin coming along here. This was from the rather dodgy side of the family. Colin. Hello, Colin. How are you? You well?
Conisbrough was the site of the second vast Kilner factory. The town is still dotted with the decaying remains of its industrial past. The Kilner plant was demolished long ago. In its place is an environmental public attraction that Jeremy has come across before.
I'm fairly convinced that this is where the hideous Earth Centre is. That would be a cruel irony. The company that faced one of the first environmental lawsuits has now been bulldozed to make way for an Earth Centre.
The entrance to the Earth Centre is still called Kilner's Bridge.
I'm surprised the Earth Centre hasn't changed the bridge to make it out of rhubarb or something. Something that is kind to the environment. A nice, I think rhubarb and yeast. That'd be a good thing to make a bridge out. It wouldn't work, but it would be kind to the environment. It's not the most beautiful bridge in the world. Not from here, anyway. Nor is it a particularly beautiful bridge from over there, either. It's nice to know that the family has a bridge.
As with the other Kilner factories, most of the site at Conisbrough is now just weeds. But here, at least, one building does survive. This house was built in 1864 by Jeremy's great-great-grandfather, Caleb Kilner. For 25 years, Caleb lived here amongst his workers and the smoke of his grimy factory. His obituary written in 1920, paints a picture of a hard-working, popular employer.
This is Caleb Kilner's obituary, the chap who built this house. He said he started out 2 shillings a week, worked his way up through the family firm until he was set up the Conisborough branch here, and just worked very hard. Everybody loved him. When he died, all the blinds were drawn along the funeral route for the houses. Enormous number of people came to the funeral, including, I noticed, some Clarksons, which is interesting. But then, all this stuff is about the church. He was obviously fanatical.
In 1899, Caleb moved his family away from the factory to a bigger house overlooking Conisborough.
In here, Ivanhoe Lodge. Crikey. A creeper-covered... Well, he couldn't have had a Range Rover back then. He'd never have got it through here. This, I gather, is where Caleb Kilner came to live after he moved away from the...
Yeah.
So, have you traced the history of the place?
Not particularly, no.
Really?
No. We just know that Caleb lived here and died in 1920.
Yeah.
Converted the house in the late 1890s, 1899.
Converted it from...
Like a cottage-like structure.
When the current owner, Peter Skinner, moved in, he discovered a box of Caleb's old photos and documents in the attic.
Oh my God, look at this, what we've got here. This is Caleb Kilner's will. Bloody hell, fire. You seen how many houses they had? This is what Caleb Kilner, who's only one of them, wasn't he? I mean, this is what he left in his will. 17 houses in Castle Grove Terrace, 13 houses in Durn Street, 11 houses in Don Street, 11 houses in Ouse Street, 13 houses in Trent Terrace, 34 cottages, 2 houses and 2 shops in Burcroft, 14 houses in Calder Terrace, 12 houses in Ferry Terrace, 10 cottage villas on south side of Low Road, known as Kimberley Pardberg, blah, 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 blah. All the above property being situated at Conisborough in the county of York, and all his land situate at Bridlington.
When Caleb died, aged 77, his son George took over the running of the factory and moved into Ivanhoe Lodge.
So there's a mortgage. George Kilner got a... Why was he taking out a mortgage in 1931 if he'd been left in 1920?
Yeah.
About 500,000 houses. Deeds relating to the 1854 square yards of freehold land with house and other buildings known as Ivanhoe Lodge. He took out a mortgage on this place 11 years after his father died. Did he have a coke habit? So in 11 years he got through the lot. So we've narrowed down a culprit at least, haven't we? George. George blew my money.
George's 1940 obituary paints a picture of a retiring soul who took no part in community life and liked nothing more than to sit by the fire with a good book. Hardly qualities that make a captain of industry. Under George's management, the firm floundered, and his father's fortune dwindled as he struggled to keep the company afloat. Jeremy may have found a culprit, but he still needs to know where George went wrong. One Yorkshire glass company from the Kilners' time has lasted to the present day. If Jeremy can find out how they survived, it might help explain why the Kilners didn't.
Well, look, the car's in there. I was really looking forward to finding out why the Kilners went bust, but I'm afraid it's all over now.
I reckon you can jump over that. Bit of a run up.
Oh, damn! Now look what's happened. Oh. I don't know how you guys are going to get across with the camera and everything. Beats and Clark. Hello. Hi, Jeremy Clarkson.
John Clark's family have been manufacturing bottles in Yorkshire for more than 150 years.
Kilners were not alone. I mean, there are a number of firms that did go under. In the 1930s, there were 400 glassmakers in this area, and today there are 3/4. They were caught by, oh, it's hard to say selecting the wrong machine for them, but as things turned out, probably they selected the wrong machine.
The Kilners may have splashed out on an Owens machine, but it was soon made obsolete by the arrival of bigger and faster machines in the 1920s. The age of mass production had arrived. Not only was the new equipment expensive, but it needed vast factories to operate efficiently, not the numerous small buildings of an old bottle works.
So they would have needed to have pulled both their works down and then build new buildings just to put the machines in.
Big money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enough just to invest in the machinery. Never mind having to build a building as well.
In the new world of modern mass production, a family firm like the Kilners simply lacked the resources to stay in the game. Other glass companies merged to form conglomerates, big enough to tear down their old factories and start again.
You just look at that photograph of George Kilner and know he wasn't going to be the sort of man who was going to start again.
George struggled on until 1937. Then, after 4 generations and 93 years, Kilner Glass closed its doors for the last time. But for the Kilner Jar, the story was far from over. The trademark was bought by one of the new conglomerates, and production continued, reaching its peak during the Second World War and becoming a kitchen icon, indispensable to a generation of housewives.
Before I go back to the south again, I do want to know what this man in Cheshire is doing with my patent, well, my trademark. What is historically and rightfully mine? Why has he got it? What's he going to do with it? And will he give it to me, or will I have to punch him to get it out of him? What's his name?
Tony Enfield, or Anthony Enfield.
What flat number was it? 6?
6. Anthony Enfield.
Hi there, we're from BBC TV. Thanks. Jeremy Clarkson.
Hi, pleased to meet you.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Very good.
Good.
I wasn't expecting you.
I found the other day when I went to the British Library
Right.
that you have the what's it called, the trademark, isn't it?
That's right.
You own the
yes.
trademark to the Kilner Jar.
I do, yes.
You've got it,
I have it now on behalf of the company.
your company,
Yeah,
and you're not
which
doing
is-
anything with it.
Which one? The Kilner brand? Oh, no, we are, yes.
You
Yes,
are?
Oh, yes, very much so.
What are you
yes.
doing?
We are selling the Kilner Jars.
You're kidding?
We are indeed.
Proud of this fine old British name.
Since the Kilners closed down in 1937, the Kilner brand has been owned by a succession of different glass companies.
So you do Ravenhead. You bought the Ravenhead name as
we
well.
bought the Ravenhead name along with all its trademarks, which included the famous Kilner brand.
I just assumed you'd be the sort of chap who'd sort of own a load of names, and then if somebody came along and said, look, we fancy doing this, you'd flog the name on.
No, no, no. We sell these to all the independent cook shops throughout the UK and Ireland.
You see, when we began this programme, I thought this was a Kilner Jar. You know, I've got
Right.
something similar
Yes.
to this at home. So I thought, yeah, that's a Kilner Jar.
Right.
But as it turned out, in the course of learning it, the Kilner... Yeah, that.
Now, these were purchased by one of our guys at Rayware, and this appears to be a genuine Kilner Jar.
Yeah, and these are made in Indonesia, I see.
Yes, I thought they were made in Italy. This particular one, the dual source, some in Italy and some in Indonesia. Unfortunately, no longer viable to be made in the UK.
It's a sad story for British industry, but it's sort of a good ending for Kilner, really, now.
During its 100-year history, the Kilner Jar has changed beyond recognition. But the name, at least, lives on as a reminder of the Kilner's place in Britain's industrial history.
In the 18th and the 19th century, Britain was just the most enormous superpower that the world had ever seen, and it was only because there were thousands and thousands of people like the Kilners making whatever it was they were making. It was just this great big patchwork quilt of ingenuity. And it's just thrilling to know that my ancestors were a part, a small part, but a part nevertheless, of that process.
William Clarkson, Thomas Clarkson, Edward Clarkson.
Sarah Clarkson.
Yeah, but you have to come down this way. And that's Grandad.
I was 18.
And those are his parents.
Yeah.
So that's
confusing.
his mother's parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go all the way back, and we found out that this one, who died in 1857, so he's your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Got it. Yeah.
He invented something.
What?
He invented a special type of bottle.
Interesting. Plastic bottle?
No? No
What?
plastic. Shall I show you?